Hi Bookish Besties, my name is Brittany. This is Rescues and Reads. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you are new, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And if you're already subscribed, as always, I appreciate your continued support. Thank you for returning to another video. Today it is time to do my November reading roundup. If you are new to this video series, it is something that I created this year to kind of play around with something new as it pertains to wrapping up the end of the month. So in this video, we are going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of November. We are also going to do some bookish stats. We are also going to do my haul and unhaul. And at the very end, we are going to balance the books to make sure that my TBR is going in the right direction, which is down. Now, I will say that I'm not bringing this series into 2025. So the December reading roundup that is going to happen in early January is going to be the final one, but I do have other plans for how I'm going to do my monthly wrap-ups as well as my hauls and unhauls in 2025, so stay tuned for more information on that. We of course are going to start with all the books that I read in November, and this was definitely one of the slowest reading months that I've had, but in all honesty, November was very chaotic. I had something going on every single weekend in the month of November, and then on top of that, all the Bookmas content that I was planning and filming and editing and all of that good stuff made November a very chaotic time, and that's only going to transfer into December, but I'm hoping that I can keep on top of my reading for December because I have the Advent Calendar Challenge, so I need to try to read at least like 12 books in the month of December, but I did not manage to do that in November. I managed to read 9 books in the month, and I think that that's probably one of my lowest or tied for the lowest month yet. So let's go ahead and talk about all the books that I read. The first book that I finished in the month of November was The Stolen Marriage by Diane Chamberlain. This is one that I had on my physical TBR, and I wanted to go ahead and get it read because I absolutely love Diane Chamberlain. After reading this, I think that this is probably one of my least favorites by Diane Chamberlain, but it was still an incredibly solid and compelling read. This is set in 1944 in the United States, and it follows our main character, Tess DeMello. I believe that she's currently in her early to mid 20s. She has been with the same guy for many years. They are engaged to be married, and her soon-to-be husband, who is a doctor, actually goes off to, I think it's Chicago, because this is the height of the polio epidemic, and he is going to Chicago to try to help with that. So he is gone for several weeks. She misses him. She is lonely. She kind of starts getting resentful of him being away because he's supposed to be there with her, helping to plan their wedding, which is coming up. And one day her friend invites her to go to Washington, D.C. to just kind of have a night out on the town and get away. And they are going to be staying in this house that is owned by a relative or a friend of the person that she is going with. And when they're staying there, there are also 2 gentlemen that are staying there. After they go out and have some drinks, Tess ends up sleeping with one of the gentlemen, and she finds out that she is pregnant. And she doesn't believe that she can actually stay with her current fiance after having done this. So she writes him a Dear John letter basically, and she takes off to find this man. And all she really wants is to let him know that she is pregnant and that she's having the baby and she could use a little bit of support. She doesn't expect him to be involved in the baby's life in any way, but to her surprise, he says that he is going to marry her. But Henry, her husband, is a very secretive man. He is keeping a lot from her. Everything starts to be revealed as we go through the book. Like I said, this is a very compelling story. However, I really didn't like the fact that all of this hinges on Tess doing something so completely out of character by drinking too much and consenting to sex with this person. Now, I will say that the consent is a little bit iffy. She was definitely drunk. She really wasn't thinking clearly, and it really didn't seem to me like she said no, but it also didn't seem to me like she full on said yes. You know what I mean? And like I said, she had been with her fiance for many years, and she was a virgin. She was saving herself for marriage with this man, and then all of a sudden she loses her virginity basically by cheating on the person that she's been with. So I didn't really love that. If you can hear that, that is Archie scratching on the door. He's very upset that I'm not letting him in here, so I really apologize about that. But as you go through the story, you definitely learn why Henry was so anxious to marry Tess. I definitely understand his reasoning. I understand why he wanted to do it, but I didn't love that either, just because I felt it was really unfair that Henry essentially manipulated Tess into marrying him just so that he could keep his own secrets. You know what I mean? So there were definitely some technical problems that I had with this for sure, but overall, like I said, a very compelling reading experience. I love Diane Chamberlain. I love the way that she crafts a story. This was still a solid 4 stars for me. Next, in the month of November, I ended up picking up The Last One at the Wedding by Jason Rekulak. This I picked up for a year-long specific project that I was doing. I had never read a Jason Rekulak before. This was my first experience with him, and I have a little bit of mixed opinions just because I was really into the story. Like, I enjoyed it while I was reading it, but ultimately I kind of found it to be a little bit of a forgettable read. It is definitely on the slower side. It's far more mystery than it is thriller, so go in with those correct expectations. But basically this follows a gentleman who has been estranged from his daughter, and then one day out of the blue, I think it's been like 3 years since they've spoken, he gets a call from his daughter and she says that she is getting married and she wants him to go to the wedding. When they go to the wedding, the father starts to become really suspicious of this family because because the matriarch of the family, the mom, has not been seen, and everybody's saying she's really, really unwell, but nobody will let the dad meet the mom and everything like that. So there's a lot of really suspicious things going on. And as he starts to figure things out and things start to get revealed, he tries to convince his daughter to leave the marriage, to not marry this man. But of course, she's adamant about doing it, and she has her own specific reasons for wanting to as well. And all of that, of course, is revealed throughout the book. Like I said, I had a good time while I was reading it. For the most part, it was fun in the moment, but I don't think that any of the details of this book are going to stick with me. One of the best books that I read in November for sure was The Book of Witching by C.J. Cook. This was my first experience with C.J. Cook, and it will 100% not be my last. The witchy vibes in this were completely on point. I absolutely loved it. So this follows our main character, Clem, and one day she gets a call that every mother dreads. Her 19-year-old daughter, who was on a hiking trip with her boyfriend and best friend, is currently in the hospital unconscious. Her body is covered with burns. Her boyfriend has been found dead, and her best friend is missing. Clem is trying to uncover what actually happened because the police are starting to suspect Erin had something to do with the death of her boyfriend and the disappearance of her best friend. And so in the present day, you're following Clem as she's trying to uncover what actually happened on this hiking trip. How did her daughter end up covered from head to toe in burns? And during this time, she actually travels to where they were going hiking in the Orkney Islands, and she starts to find out some of the sinister history of the island. And then you are following Allison in the late 1500s, and this follows her journey as she is accused of witchcraft and what she went through on the Orkney Islands back in the 1500s. I thought this was remarkable. I had a great time with this book. The vibes were immaculate, and I've added so many other CJ Cook backlist books to my TBR, and she has a new release coming out late next year that I'm really looking forward to. Next, I read The Girl from Widow Hills by Megan Miranda. This was another one that was on my physical TBR that I really wanted to get read. This follows our main character, Arden Maynor, and when she was 6 years old, she ended up sleepwalking out in the middle of a huge storm, and she kind of got swept away. She was missing for days until somebody ended up finding her kind of like in a storm drain, clinging for life. And of course, that came with a lot of fame, a lot of notoriety. And when she was old enough, she left the town. She never looked back. She changed her name. And at the start of the story, it is almost the 20th anniversary of the event. And so of course, the media interest renews, and she thinks that she's like being followed by somebody like potentially from the media. And then one day she wakes up, she's standing out in the yard, and there's a dead body at her feet. And so naturally, she's like a suspect in the investigation. People don't know who this guy was, why he was found on her doorstep. And then all of the secrets come out, including the truth of what happened to her when she was 6 years old. This was fine. This is nothing egregiously awful. This isn't something that I really have a lot of complaints about. It just wasn't anything mind-blowing. So it was good in the moment, but ultimately forgettable. So after I finished The Girl from Widow Hills, if I remember correctly, I was mostly finished with what I had intended on reading for the month of November. So I was kind of free to read whatever I felt like. And honestly, I felt like picking up the final book in the Burying Water series by K.A. Tucker. I don't know why, especially since I had just read a book by K.A. Tucker closer to the beginning of November for that collaboration that I'm doing with Sarah, but it sounded like exactly what I wanted. The Burying Water series is more of a romantic suspense type of series, and I have actually really enjoyed it, even though it is on the older side. And so the fourth and final book was Surviving Ice. This is following our main character. I believe her name is Ivy, if I remember correctly, and she is a tattoo artist working in her uncle's shop. Some thugs break in, they kill the man that her uncle is tattooing, and then they kill him, and they don't know that she is in the back witnessing the whole thing. And so she becomes part of this investigation, but she also becomes the target of the people that killed her uncle. And so bring in Sebastian. He is the person that has been sent to kind of scope her out and kill her if she knows too much. But of course, he ends up falling for her. I thought that this one was really, really solid. I think it was my favorite in the series overall. I had a great time with it. And like I said, I gave it a 4 stars. After finishing Surviving Ice, I ended up picking up The Inmate by Frida McFadden. This was a gift that was so kindly and unexpectedly gifted to me by Sherry, one of my subscribers. Thank you so much again, Sherry. This follows our main character, Brooke Sullivan, and her parents have recently died in a car crash, and she is heading back home after many, many years to kind of settle their estate and move back into her childhood home. She has a 10-year-old son who is going with her, and she ends up becoming a nurse practitioner at a maximum security prison. But what nobody knows is that she is intimately familiar with one of the inmates at the prison, and it is because of her that he is in the prison. And so you're following her as she is working at the prison and what happens when she ultimately reconnects with this man, and it goes from there. As usual, this is a twisty-turny time. You don't really know who you can trust. As per usual, at the 11th hour, Frida McFadden throws in a twist that you weren't necessarily expecting. I really enjoyed this. I think that I'm settling on a 3.5 stars because this was definitely a good, fun time, but I don't think that it's going to leave as much of a lasting impression as some of her other books like The Housemaid did. 3.5 stars, but I'm very glad to have it, and I'm so glad that I got to read it. Next, I picked up The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. This is another book that I read for the Sarah collaboration. The final results of that collaboration are going to be coming out in vlog style form in December, so be on the lookout for that. So I'm not going to say anything about my experience with this, but I did complete this book. Next, I decided to pick up The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Allie Carter. ghostwriter. This was definitely an impulse decision. So my husband and I, we went to the Renaissance Festival in Texas. We were staying in Houston, and there's a really famous independent bookstore there called Murder by the Book, and I really wanted to go and check it out. This is one of the books that they had on kind of a table full of like murder mystery holiday related reads. It was signed by the author. They had her in for a signing event, and I picked it up and I realized that Murder by the Book is actually featured briefly on a page in this story. It is mentioned by name, and I thought that was really cool, really interesting, and I thought it would be a great way to support the store as well as take home a bit of a souvenir and read something that was just going to be fun and light and not too terribly serious. So I did go ahead and pick this up. I originally had no intention of reading it, but I did end up finishing it and I had a great time with it. The audiobook was phenomenally narrated by Saskia Marveld and Zachary Weber, two very well-known audiobook narrators. It was actually a little bit more solid and substantial than I was expecting. This follows our two main characters, Maggie Chase and Ethan Wyatt. Both are successful authors. She is a cozy mystery queen and he is like the king of the thriller genre. And they are both invited mysteriously to a wealthy English estate by an unnamed fan. And when they get to this estate, they realize that the person who invited them is Eleanor Ashley, who is like one of the most famous mystery writers of all time. I'm kind of getting the impression that she's maybe like Agatha Christie-esque. And there's a very specific reason that she invited these two there. And you find out more about why that is throughout the book, especially when the next day Eleanor Ashley goes missing and nobody knows what happened to her. So Maggie Chase kind of hates Ethan Wyatt's guts. There are some reasons for this. Ethan really doesn't understand it. He really didn't think that they hated each other, so this comes as kind of a surprise to him. But she and Ethan team up to find out what happened to Eleanor Ashley, and it was just a phenomenal time. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, it was more solid and substantial than I was expecting, and I highly recommend if you are looking for a good holiday read that does have a little bit of romance in there, but it's nothing too heavy on the romance. And like I said, it was so much fun, and I highly recommend. I'm glad that I picked this up. All right, and then the very final book for November is actually one, in full transparency, that I'm still currently reading. I had all the intentions of finishing this yesterday, which was November 30th, but I spent almost all day yesterday editing and had almost no time for listening. So I started today, December 1st, with 2 hours left of the audiobook. I listened to it while I was getting ready, so I only have 1 hour left. So I'm very close to being finished. I think that I feel comfortable saying that this is going to be a 4-star read for me. The Dead Romantics is also something that wasn't on my November TBR, but I had one final challenge that I needed to satisfy for the 52 book club reading challenge for the year, and that was to read a book featuring a ghostwriter, and The Dead Romantics does. I wasn't necessarily excited about picking this up because I'm not a huge Ashley Poston fan like everybody else. I thought the 7-Year Slip was fine and definitely a unique concept, but it wasn't anything that really got me emotional or anything like that. But I am really enjoying The Dead Romantics. I can see why everybody really enjoys this story, and I do think that I'm going to settle on a 4 stars, and I will go ahead and include the page count for Dead Romantics here in November. All right, moving on into the Bookish stats. For the month of November, I completed 9 books. That totaled 3,116 pages. Out of the ratings, I had 1 3-star, 2 3.5 star, and 5 4 stars, making my overall average rating for the month a 3.75, which is not too shabby. Now, I will say that the rating for the 10,000 Doors of January is not included in here because you are going to have to wait for the vlog to find out my overall thoughts and feelings on that one, but the page count is included. In terms of genre, I classified 2 as contemporary, 1 as historical, 2 as magical realism. I classified 1 as mystery and 3 as thrillers. In terms of the type of book, all 9 of them were standard novels, and in terms of format, all 9 of them were listened to via audio. In terms of where I sourced the audiobooks, 1 of them was from Spotify, 4 from Audible, 3 from Everand, and 1 of them was borrowed from my library. All 9 of the books were intended for an adult audience, and then in terms of author status, 6 of them were authors that I had read from before, and 3 of the authors were new to me. All right, now it's time to get into the haul and the unhaul portion of our video, but before we do that, we have to establish a baseline to determine what my TBR numbers are going to look like by the end of this video. At the end of the last video, I had 13 physical books on my TBR. Out of all the books that I read for the month of November, 4 of the books were on my physical TBR prior to the start of the month, bringing my physical TBR numbers down from 13 to 9. The very first book that I received in the month of November, it was something that I believe I purchased in late October and didn't arrive to me until the start of the month. That is Waylaid, which is the final book in the True North series by Serena Bowen. This is one that I did read in October, and I wanted this to complete my collection of the series. So of course it has been read and is not being added to my physical TBR. Similarly, I purchased a copy of And There He Kept Her by Joshua Moling. This was something that I read for the final buzzword challenge that I needed to satisfy. This is another one that I really enjoyed, and I plan on continuing in this series, so I wanted to have a copy of this. Another book that I picked up after I had already read it was The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. Again, another one that is not going to be added to my TBR. A book that was so kindly and unexpectedly sent to me was Saving Six by Chloe Walsh. This is the next book in the Boys of Tommen series by Chloe Walsh. I've talked about Binding and Keeping 13 multiple times on my channel since I read them, and Tara heard me talk about it and decided to send me the next one just kind of as a thank you for hosting Slayer Fest, and also I think she really just wants me to read this. And I haven't officially decided, but I think that this might be the very first book that I start 2025 with. I feel like I'm just going to be in the mood for it. Also, the first several days of January are looking kind of packed for me because my parents are coming to visit, and so I need something that I can just kind of get lost in and dive in and out of and take my time with. And so I think that is what I'm going to do for this one. This book I feel like is a more reasonable length at 489 pages, so hopefully it will not take me as long to read as the other ones. Okay, so I apologize if there is an angle change or anything is wonky. I ran out of memory card room and I'm not able to export anything at this time because I have all the Bookmas content on there and my computer memory is full as well. So I have to like edit and film and delete videos in order for me to like export. So I had to break out another memory card, and I'm not able to film in as high quality with the memory card. So I also apologize if you notice a quality difference in this last part of the video, but we only have a few more things to go over, so hopefully it won't take too terribly long. I was just finishing out my book haul. Of course, I did also haul The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year in November, and I did read this. And then the last two books that I've hauled for the month of November are actually the exclusive Fairy Loot editions of the Crowns of Nyaxia, the first two books in that series, starting with Serpent and the Wings of Night. I mean, look how stunning that is, y'all. Look how the light bounces off that silver foiling, and it's this beautiful, like dark bluish purple, and there's a snake on there. Oh my gosh, it is absolutely stunning. There are the sprayed edges. It is not really coming across too clear, I don't think, on camera. It is the body of a snake and some roses. Here is the back again with a snake. Look at these naked hardcovers, y'all. Gosh, look at that character art, the spine, the back. Here are the front end pages, and here are the back ones. And of course it is signed. And then we have Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. Again, this beautiful bluish purple with that silver foiling. Here are the end pages, this time with feathers and roses. And then there's the back and the spine. Here's the naked hardcover for this one, the naked spine and the naked back. Here are the front end pages and the back end pages. So these are incredibly stunning. I have read Serpent and the Wings of Night, but I have not yet read this one. I am looking forward to getting to this one at some point. Okay, so out of all the books that I hauled for the month of November, only 2 of them are being added to my physical TBR, so that will bring my TBR from 9 up to 11. However, I actually have 2 books that I'm going to unhaul today, and they are both recent Fairy Loot exclusive editions from their adult book only box. That is Long Live Evil by Sarah Reese Brennan, as well as Sorcery and Small Magics by Maiga Ducey. I never did figure out how to pronounce her name, so I'm so terribly sorry. In full transparency, one of the only reasons why I subscribe to the monthly Fairy Loot box is because I want to have priority access to their special edition releases. I do like to see what they send every month to see if it's something that I could potentially be interested in. And when I do think that I know what the book is going to be, if I know that it's not something that I want, I will skip it. Fairy Loot only allows you to skip 4 times a year. So that is potentially 8 books that I'm receiving that I don't want. Now, I essentially immediately go on to Pango and sell them essentially for the same price that I purchased them at. I kept Long Live Evil because Jay Kristoff absolutely loved this book, and I trust Jay Kristoff, but I just don't think that it is a book for me. Same with this. I don't necessarily know if I would say that this is cozy fantasy. I know that cozy is being overused these days, but this definitely doesn't seem like it's going to be a high epic fantasy. It doesn't seem like it's going to have like a hard magic system or a well-developed world or anything like that. It seems like it could also be fairly low stakes. That is just not my vibe. That is not what I love to read in fantasy. In fact, something that I've noticed about myself is that the more complicated a fantasy is, the more that I can really dive into the world, the more invested I'm going to be in it, the more that I'm going to want to read it. And so because of that, I don't want to force myself to give this a try, even though I really liked the opening paragraph. It sounded really snarky, like there was going to be a lot of really great humor in here. I just don't think that these books are the ones for me. I have to be really selective about the fantasy books that I pick up, and unfortunately, these ones are just not going to make the cut, so they are going to be put on my Pango. So if my math is correct, that means my physical TBR is actually back down to 9, so I have officially gotten below double digits, and I am pretty happy with that. My book of the month box is about to come in, and so that's going to ratchet the TBR number right back up, but that is definitely okay. I've gotten my TBR to such a manageable number now that I don't feel as stressed about it, and that's one reason why I don't think that I need to really continue with the balancing of the books or the roundups as they currently stand. All right, everybody, that is it. That is my roundup for the month of November. Please comment down below and let me know if you have read any of the books that I read in November and what your thoughts are, or some of your favorite books from the month of November. Or if you've made it to the end of this video and you are not feeling chatty, go ahead and leave me a snake emoji in honor of the Crowns of Nyaxia series series by Carissa Broadbent. And as always, if you like this video or if you just like me, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Throughout the month of December from the 1st through the 25th, I plan on posting one video a day leading up to Christmas. And if you don't want to miss any of that content or chaos, please be sure to hit that subscribe button down below if you have not already. I would love to connect with you in any of those future videos or on any of my other social media platforms, which you can always find linked down below, along with any books featured in the video. Until next time, y'all. Bye.